Chapter 14. Leaving appearances and still cessation. Chapter 14. At that time, upon hearing this sutra and deeply understanding its purport, Subhuti wept and felt remorse and addressed the Buddha. How rare, world-honored one, is this sutra so profoundly explained by the Buddha. From the time I have attained the eye of wisdom until the present, I have never heard such a sutra. So chapter 14, I think I told you last time, this is when Subhuti starts to get it. This is when Subhuti's Arhat mind starts to understand that the truth of liberation, the truth of Buddhahood is not in the cessation, is not in the emptiness of no appearance. This is when Subhuti starts to have that aha moment, really is here. That's why he wept. At this point, Subhuti wept. He cried with remorse. I have never heard such a thing. Now I'm starting to understand. There's a commentary on this line from Asanga. He says like this about this. He says, deep yet firm in meaning, this transcends other sutras because of its great pure connection. Its virtue has no equal. The expression deep yet firm refers to rivers that you can cross despite their apparent depth. This teaching is deep because of no self or being is found to exist. And it is firm because despite such a realization, bodhisattvas are not alarmed, frightened, or distressed. The pure connection refers to the lineage of the Buddha. That means that it is pure and it is profound because it points to the real meaning of no self. And yet, even when understanding the meaning of no self, the bodhisattvas are not distressed. They are not scared. And even though they see the no self, they still make the commitment to liberate all beings. Even though they see that they are not truly existent. You get it? This is the profound, truly, truly profound meaning here. This is the truly, truly profound meaning here. They are not scared. Many people would be scared with these teachings, and this is referred in several times in some of the Prajnaparamita sutras about when the mind gets scared, when the mind hears such teachings like this, and the mind goes like freaks out a little bit. Particularly people that would be like in the path of cessation of the Arhat, they could get scared to listen to this. That the cessation of emptiness is not really the end of the road. Or people that are very much clinging to a self, people that very much cling to existence, people that cling to the real existence of beings, of things. If they have some kind of understanding and if they hear such things, they can get really very scared. Their minds can really be really frightened actually. And such people, of course, cannot apply this path. They cannot apply this path. Their minds are not prepared for that yet. It takes a lot of roots of virtue to even just accept this. And the Buddha will talk about that as well. It takes a lot of roots of virtue to even just accept this. Just accept it. Forget about understanding it and really realizing it. Just accepting, just having a basic level of understanding and accepting this. Anyone who has that, then it means you've met this before. The Buddha says that later, actually. If you have even a superficial understanding of the meaning of this sutra and you don't reject it, if you accept it, that means you've met it before, probably many times before. You already have profound roots of virtue to even just be able to accept it, or else you couldn't. Not possible. So the sutra continues. Word honored one, if someone listens to this sutra with a mind of pure faith and can bring forth the appearance of reality, know that such a person has accomplished foremost and rare merit and virtue. World honored one, the appearance of reality is without appearance. Therefore, the Tathagata calls it the appearance of reality. So Subhuti now is sort of saying what he understood. So Subhuti is trying to express now what he has understood so far from what the Buddha has taught. So Subhuti is saying that the appearance of reality is without appearance. Therefore, it's called the appearance of reality. So Subhuti now is starting to get it. Okay, so the appearance of reality is without appearance. There's no self-nature there. There's no real existence there. And to that understanding, to that realization, to that seeing that there's nothing truly there, to that we call the real appearance of reality. Do you get it? That's the point. And Subhuti is starting to understand that. He continues, world honored one, now as I listen to this sutra, I believe, understand, accept, and uphold it without difficulty. In the future, in the last 500 years, if there are living beings who, when they hear this sutra, believe, understand, accept, and uphold it, they will be outstanding and most rare. So this again is referring to kind of, when we will reach the kind of the tail, if that will come, if the day will come when we reach that tail of the ending of the Buddha's teaching in the world, is referring to that again, where the real Dharma is hard to find. There will be very difficult to find any real teachers, anyone with real knowledge, experience. So will there be someone who can actually uphold and understand this teaching, this sutra? But Subhuti says they will. And the Buddha had said before that yes, there will be. And as I explained in the previous time, that's why some people, like Dogen and myself also, don't really accept that there is an end to the Buddha Dharma. I don't think there is, actually. I think there will always be, manifestation continuously all the time. It will be more rare, yes. Again, because if there's no people interested, you see, even if there's a teacher, even if a fully enlightened Buddha would appear in the world, but if there's no one that is interested in what he has to say, but of course, then they don't appear. That's the point, because the appearance of a Buddha is also interdependent origination. You must understand this. The appearance of a Buddha, the appearance of teachers with realization, that is also interdependent origination. If there's no one to listen, there is no one to speak. It's the same, You cannot separate. You cannot have a Buddha without arhats and bodhisattvas, disciples. You cannot have a teacher without students. Even a Buddha cannot, if a fully awakened Buddha could turn anybody, everybody, then when the Buddha appeared, he would have turned everybody. But even the Buddha couldn't do that. And the Buddha himself, when he was alive, he had many enemies and he had many people that were against him. So it doesn't work like this. And we will see later, the Buddha talks about that. But that's why people like Dogen and others say that, and the Buddha himself says that in the beginning of this sutra, that bodhisattvas will always keep taking birth, to always keep the line. It's never broken. Bodhisattvas never forsake. The only thing that depends is how much can be done, you see. Because if there's no one interested in listening to the Dharma, then bodhisattvas cannot teach the Dharma. They will have to do something else. They will have to use skillful means. That's one of the main topics of the Lotus Sutra, for example. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha gives this example of the children inside the burning house, and how the bodhisattva outside of the burning house tries to, and the children don't understand. The children are trapped inside the burning house and they don't understand what's happening. They don't understand it, they have to get out. And the bodhisattva uses all these tricks. He uses all these kind of, games and tricks to try to lure them out of the house because they don't believe. So the Lotus Sutra talks a lot about this. So if beings are not interested, if they don't have the roots of virtue, if they don't have the connection to actually listen to the Dharma, to practice the Dharma, to enter the path, then bodhisattvas have to apply skillful means. They have to use all other kinds of tricks to kind of nudge them, to kind of guide them to a point where they can be ripe for a Buddha to appear, to actually enter the Buddha Dharma. And it's always like this, always like this. So there will always be bodhisattvas manifesting in the world continuously. If there's no conditions to openly teach, then it's not openly taught. That's what I said in the beginning. If there are no interest, teachers don't teach. If people don't, completely stop asking for teachings, eventually teachers stop teaching. Teachers stop appearing, actually, for the most part. They'll be born somewhere else, where there's somebody interested to listen, It's interdependent origination. It is just how it works. Where were we? So the Subhuti here is talking about that, but he's saying, but there will always be beings that will understand, accept, and uphold it. But they will be most rare. They'll be truly most rare, because these will, in those days, those beings will always be like bodhisattvas, people who already have, profound roots of virtue, and that are already doing this kind of upholding of the Dharma. And then Subhuti continues, why? Such people will be without the appearance of a self, the appearance of others, the appearance of living beings, and the appearance of a life. Why? The appearance of self is actually no appearance. The appearance of others, the appearance of living beings, and the appearance of a life are actually not appearances. Why? All those who are called Buddhas have relinquished all appearances. Problem. It almost looked like Subhuti had gotten it completely. But all of a sudden, problem. Little problem. And that's why the sutra is not finished. Maybe the Buddha thought, okay, I'm done, Subhuti got it. But then I thought you had understood, but there's still something there. Subhuti now makes a little bit boo-boo here. Because now Subhuti is reporting what he understood, right? But when he says like this here, so such people will be without the appearance of a self, the appearance of others, the appearance of living beings, and the appearance of a life. Okay, so far so good. Why? The appearance of self is actually no appearance. Okay. The appearance of others, the appearance of living beings, and the appearance of a life are actually not appearances. It starts to drift a little bit. Why? All those who are called Buddhas have relinquished all appearances. Ooh, big problem. Big problem. So Subhuti now here falls into an old habit, his old arhat habit. All those who are called Buddhas have relinquished all appearances. So Subhuti here shows that he's still clinging. He's still clinging to the cessation of seeing things as appearances. So he kind of already understood. He already kind of released a lot of that, but it's not completely gone. He's still clinging here to no appearances, to the illusory aspect, to the emptiness aspect. And in this sutra, we need to resolve that completely. We need to really go beyond all these extremes. So, sutra continues. The Buddha told Subhuti, So it is, so it is. If someone, so this so it is, the Buddha is agreeing with Subhuti's first two statements. Okay, so that's fine. So you'll see now, the Buddha agrees with the first two things that Subhuti said. No problem, like I said. But now the Buddha corrects the final part. So it is, so it is. If someone hears this sutra and is not frightened, alarmed or terrified, you should know such a person is most rare. Why? Subhuti. The foremost paramita spoken of by the Tathagata is not the foremost paramita. Therefore, it is called the foremost paramita. Subhuti, the paramita of patience spoken of by the Tathagata is not the paramita of patience. Therefore, it is called the paramita of patience. Now, so how do we interpret this? How do we understand this? You see, while Subhuti, in his final statement before, he stressed that those called Buddhas have relinquished all appearances. The Buddha doesn't do that. The Buddha goes a different direction here. So he agreed with the first statements. He agreed when Subhuti said that such people will be without the appearance of a self, the appearance of others, the appearance of living beings and the alive, because the appearance of self is actually no appearance. That's fine. The Buddha agreed with that. When it gets to the final point, all those who are called Buddhas have relinquished all appearances. Now the Buddha here goes into a different direction. And he says to Subhuti that out of the blue, the Buddha now starts to talk about patience. And then he'll talk about generosity. You see, the Buddha now goes different direction. He says, no. It's not that. That's not the point. So the Buddha here, basically, the Buddha is not stressing the no, he's not putting emphasis on the no perception aspect, like Subhuti was doing. The Buddha here is stressing no fear, or patience, or forbearance. As it says in the Heart Sutra, having no fear, there's no obstructions. There's no fixations. So that means that this wisdom, this prajnaparamita, that is the most profound that the Buddha is talking here, you cannot separate this from the other paramitas, as I said in the beginning today. You cannot separate them. It is not just about non-perception or the perception of non-appearances, as Subhuti was still clinging to. That's not the only point. You cannot separate them. Yes, appearances are illusory. Things are non-things. Yes, true. However, it is the no fear. It is the complete and total surrender, the forbearance, the taking of that truth, the complete shouldering of that truth on the Bodhisattva's shoulders, that manifests the paramitas. This is what the Buddha is stressing here. Not to get hooked up on that no appearance. Because if we get hooked up on that no appearance, it's a dead end. We cannot attain full enlightenment, full awakening, full Buddhahood. It does not manifest. So the Buddha is now still correcting Subhuti. So as it says in the Heart Sutra, as before, because there are no obstructions, there is no fear. No fear means that this complete forbearance. Actually, in the path of the Mahayana, this is one of the, in the path of junction. So if you talk about the three paths, so path of accumulation, path of junction, path of training. In the path of junction, one of the last levels of the path of junction is exactly that, called forbearance. This is the point where the practitioner has no more fear. Has no more fear of what? has no more fear of emptiness. Emptiness. That point of forbearance, called that level, that stage in the passive junction, that is called forbearance, is when the practitioner completely has no more fear of the truth of emptiness. Totally accepts, or is beyond accepting or rejecting the fact that I have no self. There is no self. No self of me, no self of phenomena, no self of individuals, no self of sentient beings. The total and complete acceptance of that without any fear happens only there, at that level called forbearance. Because this is quite difficult, actually. Maybe you can have an intellectual understanding, but really fully accept this without fear, hesitation. It's not so easy. It sometimes takes a lot of cultivation. And it's because of that forbearance that the Bodhisattva can manifest the profound wisdom and profound compassion of the paramitas. They arise from that. They're inseparable from that. That is the real meaning of wisdom, like this. And this is the patience that manifests these skillful means. You see, the Buddha here starts to kind of talk about these as skillful means. I actually, in my notes, I wrote here a passage from the Lotus Sutra, as I was just actually talking to Sam about it. I actually have a small passage from the Lotus Sutra about that is relevant here. In the Lotus Sutra, it says, "We only use skillful means to lead beings to enter the gate and see their own nature. This is called the supreme perfection. Thus, you should know that the skillful means are like yellow leaves that stand for gold." Like fake gold, fake gold. Like just a trick. They stop children from crying. When followers of the lower vehicles hear such a name, they think it is real and cling to it in their practice. Those who want to leave samsara do not yet realize there is no samsara to leave. That's the point. Huh? The Buddha says like this in the Lotus Sutra. So the people, the followers, the people that have not yet understood this teaching of wisdom, when they hear about enlightenment, when they hear about awakening, when they hear about Buddhahood, they cling to it. They cling to it as something to attain, something to go to. I'm going to leave samsara and go and attain awakening. And they cling. So the Buddha says, when they hear such a name of awakening, they think it is real and they cling to it in their practice. The Buddha says, those who want to leave samsara do not yet realize there is no samsara to leave. So we keep playing here, the same, trying to find that little gap, that little gap in between, So the Buddha starts. I will finish with this chapter today. Let me finish this chapter, okay? I know I'm a little bit delayed, but just to finish the chapter, okay? So the Buddha here starts to address about patience. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's in the next chapter that he talks about generosity. He does not talk about all the paramitas, but the point is the same. The point is the same. For all, it applies the same. Patience is the first one that he talks about, because it's the most important one, actually. Patience or forbearance is very important. This is really important. Traditionally, we will speak about three kinds of patience. There's three kinds of patience. There's just ordinary patience, with what we call patience, like just regarding worldly things, Be patient with that person, or be patient in this situation, or be patient. Be patient, the coronavirus will finish at some point, be patient, patience of the worldly kind of things. That's one kind of patience. The second one is patience about inner things. So patience about physical or mental suffering. So if we have some kind of mental, psychological, physical problem, to have patience about that. That's the second kind of patience. And the third kind of patience, which is the one that the Buddha is talking about here, is the third kind of patience, which is the patience that tolerates, or that has this kind of forbearance, this kind of really profound patience towards the ultimate nature, towards the unborn ultimate nature, which was I was just talking about. This truly patience towards the truth of emptiness, the real prajnaparamita. This kind of patience. This is actually the third type. And that's the one the Buddha is talking about here. So another thing, what is the difference here? You see, that the real patience that the Buddha is talking about here, because in that quote, the Buddha is saying that this great paramita is not a paramita. The paramita of patience is not patience. And because it's not patience, it is real patience. So the meaning here is that if we are trying to be patient, you are not patient. If we are clinging, if we are attached to the idea of having to be patient, I have to be patient, then you're not. Then it's blocked. It's blocked right there. The moment we have such idea, I have to be patient, you are already impatient. Right there. Do you see it, right? Immediately. There's no possibility. And the moment you start to think about it, okay, but I have to be patient, then definitely. And the more you think about it, the less patient you are. The more you try to think I have to be patient, the less patient you become. But the real patience the Buddha is talking here, there is no such kind of idea. If we have an idea of patience as something to attain, that's not real patience. That's not the paramita of patience. That's not it. If you're attached, basically, in putting it very shortly, if you are attached to patience or to the idea of patience, then you are not patient. You cannot be. Not possible. So the Buddha continues. Why? Subhuti. In the past, when the king of Kalinga dismembered my body, I had no appearance of a self, of others, of living beings, or of a life. I had neither a perception nor a no perception. Why? When I was cut limb from limb, if I had an appearance of a self, an appearance of others, an appearance of living beings, or an appearance of a life, I would have been outraged. Now, this is very important. Now the Buddha is really making his point here. So he's referring to another episode in his past life. This is a past life where the Buddha was cultivating the path. He was the Bodhisattva on the path. He was a monk, yogi, and he was meditating in a forest. And in this kingdom, kingdom called Kalinga. And the king was around, I don't remember exactly the story. I think he was hunting or doing something like this. And he was with his concubines. And while the king was busy, his concubines were wandering around the forest, and they found this yogi, meditating in the forest. And they were very curious, and they started to talk to him. And he talked to them, and they were chatting. And at some point, the king was like, where are my women? Where are my concubines, And they start searching for them, and then he finds them. And when he finds them, there they're all around, this monk, this yogi sitting, And the king becomes very angry, very jealous, very angry. Who are you to be talking to my women, my concubines? What are you trying? Are you trying to steal them from me? Are you trying to seduce my concubines? And the answer is no. I'm just a meditator. I'm just here. They came when we were talking, But the king didn't believe. He was very jealous. Like, no, I don't believe you. You're trying to. No, I'm really just here. And no, I don't believe you. You're not truthful. You're not truthful. You're not authentic. If you are really true, if you truly are not trying to seduce, if you're really authentic, practitioner, meditator, then if I cut your ear off, you will not be, upset. Do you think so? Do you think you could tolerate that? If you're a real practitioner? And he answered them, No problem. And the king takes his sword and cuts the ear off. And I think the Buddha's name in that life was called Sumedu, or Sumeju, something like this. And he just sits there, completely, no problem, no response. And the king even became more angry. You're just pretending. Let's see if I cut another ear off. Cuts another ear off. Still no response. And the king becomes more angry. But I'm not going to go the whole story, but you can understand. The king continues basically. He cuts his nose off, his hands, his arms, his feet, his legs. And at that point, he's just sitting there, no response. And at some point, the king understands. Maybe I made a big mistake. Are you really? Is it really true? Are you really such accomplished yogi? And he answered him, if it is really true that I have absolutely no anger, that I have complete patience about what happened, if it's really true, then all my body parts will come back together. In that moment, even before he had finished speaking that sentence, all his body parts came back together again. So this is the episode that the Buddha is talking about. This is part of the stories of his past lives. So when the king of Kalinga dismembered my body, I had no appearance of a self, of others, of living beings, or of a life. I had neither a perception nor a non-perception. So the Buddha is trying to explain here that it is not just about non-perception. It is not just about non-perception. It is also about non-perception. Do you understand? Because when it's about the non-perception, when we get to the non-perception of non-perception, okay, the no perception of no perception, then that's when compassion arises. That's when all this appears. You see? So what the Buddha is trying to say by telling this story, the point of this story, basically, is that the goal is not no perception, okay? The goal is not emptiness. The goal is not no perception. The emptiness, the understanding, the realization of emptiness, the no perception is the means. Is not the end goal. Is the means. This is the distinction the Buddha is making here. So when Subhuti in the last phrase said, the Buddha has no perception, the Buddha now is correcting him and is giving him his example of this story, of this past life. And the key here is this sentence that the Buddha says, I had neither a perception nor a non-perception. Means I didn't have a real, truly existing perception of my body, a king, my body being cut off. I didn't have really a perception of that. But also, I did not have a non-perception of that. And that's why he had the wisdom. That's why he says here, I had neither a perception nor non-perception. Why? When I was cut limb from limb, if I had an appearance of a self, an appearance of others, an appearance of living beings or alive, I would have been outraged. So you see, there's a game here. When I was cut limb from limb, I had no perception of being cut from limb from limb. You know that? When I was cut limb from limb, I had no perception of being cut limb from limb. This is the point. This is the point the Buddha is trying to make. Not to cling to no appearance, to emptiness. And it is from there, that's the true patience. That's the true paramita of patience, forbearance. It's there. It's right there. And not just patience, all of them. All of them arise from this. All of them arise inseparable from this wisdom, actually, like this. So, In the continuation of the sutra, the Buddha will then stress the paramitas. He will talk about the other perfections. So he's starting with no fear, with patience, as we just saw, and he will include all others. It will include all others to stress that appearance and emptiness are not separate things. Appearance and emptiness are not separate things. As it said before, as I said in that quote from the Lotus Sutra, there is no samsara to live. You know, people that have, if we have this idea that we have to leave samsara, to attain awakening, to stop samsara, then this is not the Buddha's wisdom. This is not it. This is not it. There is no samsara to live. We have to recognize the real nature of samsara. When we recognize the real nature of samsara, when we recognize the real nature of this mind, the real nature of appearances, we recognize that there are no appearances. And when we recognize that there are no appearances, by recognizing that there are no appearances, we recognize the true nature of the appearances. And that is the truth, the realization. And from there, then there is this, all these paramitas manifest spontaneously, naturally. The real benefit, the real compassion that does not cling to anything. It is a compassion that does not cling to the existence of sentient beings, does not cling to the existence of samsara, does not cling to the existence of suffering, does not cling to the existence of self, and yet it benefits. That's the true middle way, that's the true middle path, basically. The chapter continues. Moreover, Subhuti, I recall that in the past, for 500 lives, I was the patient immortal. During all those lives, I was without the appearance of a self, others, living beings, or a life. For that reason, Subhuti, a bodhisattva should relinquish all appearances and bring forth the mind of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. He should bring forth thoughts which do not rely on forms or which do not rely on sounds, smells, tastes, tangible objects, or dharmas. He should bring forth thoughts which do not rely on anything. Any relying of the mind is not relying. So now the Buddha is now saying to him that he recalls his 500 past lives when he was called this bodhisattva patient immortal. That was the name, is the translation of the name. And during all those lives, he didn't have any appearance of a self, other living beings, or of a life. So for that reason, a bodhisattva should relinquish all appearances, but bring forth the mind of Bodhi. The mind of Bodhi. Again, this is the balance. You see, this is the balance. He should bring forth thoughts which do not rely on forms or sounds and so on. Any relying of the mind is not relying. So basically, he's saying that if we are clinging to this cessation, to the unborn cessation, emptiness aspect, then there's still anger there, you see. If we are rejecting samsara, if you say, I don't want samsara, I'm done with samsara, I want nirvana. If I have this attitude, this is anger. Because this I don't want samsara, this is anger, this is rejection. There is still rejection there. So there is no paramita of patience. There is no paramita of patience, basically. This is why we cannot separate the 6 paramitas. In wisdom, you see, in the prajnaparamita, all the 5 paramitas are included, inseparable. You cannot separate them. So therefore the Buddha says, the bodhisattva's mind should not rely on forms when he gives Subhuti. because the Bodhisattva wishes to benefit all living beings. It should give in this way. The Tathagata says that all appearances are actually not appearances, and that all living beings are actually not living beings. Subhuti. The Tathagata speaks the truth. He speaks factually. So here when the Buddha says the Tathagata speaks factually, he's basically saying that good actions produce good results, bad actions produce bad results. So the Buddha is not rejecting causality here. He's saying that factually this is like this. If you do a positive action, you get a positive result. If you do a bad action, you get a bad result. That's the meaning here when he says he speaks factually. And then in the next line it says, he speaks of things as they really are. So when he says like this, the Buddha means that, but only the wisdom of prajnaparamita can lead to awakening. So there's two parts here. Huh? So the Buddha says, the Tathagata speaks the truth, he speaks factually. Means cause and effect. Good deeds, good results, bad deeds, bad results. Next part. He speaks of things as they really are. That means only the prajnaparamita can lead to awakening. And also means that we can only truly benefit sentient beings if we are not attached to the idea of a sentient being. While we believe in the idea that sentient beings exist, we can't really help them. You can't help them. If you believe you exist, and if you believe sentient beings exist, then you can't help them. You couldn't help them. You couldn't, because you don't understand. When someone understands that sentient beings are not really existent, that there's no self there, no self here, then you can help them. Then the paramitas manifest, truly, authentically. The Sutra continues, he never deceives, nor are his words peculiar, Subhuti. The Dharma that the Tathagata obtained is neither true nor false. The Dharma the Tathagata speaks is neither true nor false. Very important. It is beyond true and false. Because how are we going to judge? How are we going to judge if it's true or false? How can we judge the truthness or falsity of suchness? How can suchness be judged as being true or false? Against what? Against which measure? Because when we speak of true and false, we are measuring against something. There's a reference point. There's a reference point to compare. How can we compare suchness with something to say if it's true or false? We cannot. See, anything that can be judged as true or false because we can find a measurement, it's not the true Dharma. The true Dharma, as Buddha says here, is neither true nor false. Subhuti, a bodhisattva who gives with the mind relying on dharmas is like a person in the dark who sees nothing at all. Means that a bodhisattva who gives means that who practices generosity with a mind that is believing on the existence of phenomena. Believing in the true existence of phenomena. A bodhisattva who does that, who gives like this, is like a person in the dark who sees nothing at all. It means this full of delusion. A bodhisattva who gives with a mind that does not rely on dharmas. It is like a person with eyes who can see all kinds of things in the bright sunlight. So basically the point is that if you are attached to existence, if you are attached to the real existence of things, then you're bound by that. You're limited by that. On the other hand, if you are attached to the non-existence of things, then you're bound by that. And you miss their natural, clear, manifest, functional display. both beliefs are limiting. If you believe in existence, you're limited. If you believe in non-existence, you're limited. That's the point here. There's a very beautiful sentence that the Zen master said about this. He said, "The fools get rid of phenomena and not the mind. The wise get rid of the mind and not phenomena. A bodhisattva's mind is like space. A bodhisattva gives away everything, outside and inside." Listen to this, especially the first part. The fools get rid of phenomena and not the mind. Means the fools, they try to deal with phenomena as it would be real. They try to block, to transform, to reject, to cease, to stop perceiving, whatever. They try to block, to resolve phenomena, and not the mind. The fools get rid of phenomena and not the mind. The wise get rid of the mind and not phenomena. The wise get rid of the mind and not phenomena. This summarizes this chapter very beautifully, actually. A bodhisattva gives away everything, outside and inside. So to finish the sutra, Subhuti, if in the future there is a good man or good woman who can accept, uphold, read or recite this sutra, then the Tathagata, using his Buddha wisdom, will thoroughly know and thoroughly see such a person. That person will obtain immeasurable and boundless merit and virtue. This is a very important statement. The Buddha is saying here that anyone in the future that can accept this teaching, but not just accept, uphold it. What means uphold? Means to study it, to practice it, to apply it, to put it into practice, to maintain it. So anyone who can accept, uphold, read or recite, then the Tathagata with his wisdom will thoroughly know and thoroughly see such a person. Why? Because this sutra itself is the Buddha. Well, we come back again to the same place. Because this sutra itself is the Buddha mind, is the Buddha wisdom. So any mind that is fully engaged with penetrating the wisdom of this sutra, any such mind that is engaged with this sutra in an authentic way, it is immediately visible. It is immediately in the space of the Tathagata mind. And all Buddhas know such mind. All Buddhas see such mind. You become visible. You become visible. Look. Another one. Good luck. Good luck. Like this. That person will obtain immeasurable and boundless merit and virtue. We will finish here with this chapter. But actually later down, the Buddha will actually make an even more radical statement and say that not only the Buddha sees such person, not only the Buddhas will see such person that is really engaging with this sutra, but awakening is guaranteed. Buddhahood is guaranteed. Anyone that upholds this sutra, Buddhahood is guaranteed. It's like certified, stamped. But that's later. That's next chapter. Next episode. Any questions? Okay, then.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, go for it.
Concerning the Lotus Sutra.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps I already think that the question is quite stupid, but then if the conclusion in the end is we're a bit stupid when we think that we have to leave samsara, then why this metaphor with the burning house and everything?
Skillful means.
I just said, actually in the end he says that the Lotus Sutra wouldn't really haven't been necessary if you understand the Vajracchedika Sutra.
Yes, of course. Of course. Of course. The point of the skillful means is when people don't understand.
It's like an extension.
Sorry? Speak a bit louder because I can't hear you. It's skillful means. It's skillful means. Because otherwise what to do? What to do, you know? If people don't want to, if people either don't understand, they have no interest, they have no motivation, they don't believe, they don't accept the Dharma, then what to do? What to do? Then the Bodhisattvas have to manifest all kinds of trickery and all kinds of, you know, games, you know, to try to make people minds to a point where they are interested in, there is something called awakening. There is something called awakening. There is something called samsara. Okay, so awakening sounds better than samsara, so I want that. Okay, good, then come. That's still a trick, you see, that's still a trick. But it has to be done. But it has to be done to come to the point of understanding that actually awakening is also not something you attain somewhere, and samsara is not really existent. It is all it's illusory. It is just all a misperception. But to get to the point where the mind can even understand or accept this is not so easy. This is not so easy, you know. And even to get to the point where people are really willing to really walk the path, but seriously, not just because there's many levels, of course, you know, where people are willing to really walk the path, to really, okay, I want to get it. It's also not so easy, you know, to get to the point where people are willing to make sacrifices, to make hard choices, to leave a lot of their worldly mind aside and just dedicate to the path is also not so easy. Because even though we speak that is not about renunciation, yeah, well, sure, that's true, but that's the point of view. That's the point of view. But in reality, there's not a single yogi that has attained realization and has not renounced a lot, you know. I mean, that's the truth, you know. If people think that they can live completely worldly lives, and listen to Dharma on Sunday and that's going to get to something, that's complete fantasy, you know. But again, that's Lotus Sutra, that's skillful means, you know, that's just, you know, pulling along. But at some point we need to get out of the house and just walk and really commit, you know, because all that is just steps, you know, small steps. So there's many levels for this kind of skillful means. The entire Dharma is a skillful mean, actually. The whole thing is just a skillful mean. To come to this single understanding, to this single that's it. That's it. That's it. You hear this. That's it. Now don't leave that. Never again. You know? But what about my appointment tomorrow? You know, after. So it takes time. It takes time, and maturing gradually. Enlightenment is sudden. There's no building. It's just this. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to live. But it is this worldly mind that doesn't want to let go. Actually, it is not enlightenment that is gradual. It is the surrendering of the worldly mind that appears to be gradual. Actually, maybe that's another way to kind of put it around. So all these tricks of the Lotus Sutra, it's all kind of dealing with that. You know, with this mind, this worldly mind, basically.